So just a heads up for those watching, if I do end up coughing during this video, it's because I'm catching a bit of a cold, so just an apology ahead of time. So, a little bit of a mini bombshell blew up in today's election cycle, or news cycle, in the form of a leaked piece of audio of Hillary Clinton giving a speech to some of her private campaign donors in a meeting in February. So let's give a listen.
It is important to recognize what's going on in this election. Everybody who's ever been in any election that I'm aware of is quite bewildered because there is a strain of, on the one hand, a kind of populist, nationalist, xenophobic, discriminatory kind of approach that we hear too much of from the Republican candidates. And on the other side, there's just a deep desire to believe that, we can have free college, free health care, that what we've done hasn't gone far enough and we just need to, go as far as, Scandinavia, whatever that means. And half the people don't know what it means, but it is something that they deeply feel. So as a friend of mine said the other day, I am occupying from the center left to the center right. And I don't have much company there because it is difficult when you're running to be president and you understand how hard the job is. I don't want to overpromise. I don't want to tell people things that I know we cannot do. I want to level with the American people and be very clear about the progress I think we can make. Now, it won't surprise any of you to hear me say that I think we can grow the economy, get back to more broad-based, inclusive prosperity. We did it in the 90s. We saw the results of having not only a lot of jobs, but incomes rising.
Okay, first of all, Hillary, you have no company on the center left or the center right, really? I mean, I know the Democratic establishment isn't exactly filled with lives of the party. I mean, really, do you think that either of us, just between you and me, that you'd want to be stuck talking to W. Wasserman Schultz for more than 10 minutes? I don't think so. But really, you have a lot of company there. The dynamic between the Republican and the Democratic establishment has pretty much become completely nuts to the right. Completely nuts to the right. And just a little bit to the right. So we don't really have anyone at the middle point here. We definitely don't have anyone in power all the way over here. We got Bernie, and that's about it. And I guess Elizabeth Warren, who's still a little bit coming closer to the right there, but she's still there. But we definitely don't have the majority of the Democratic Party, and we definitely don't have anything close to the Republican Party being left or anything. So it's patently ridiculous that she tries to make this claim. And it also doesn't help that around this time, she was attempting to appeal to voters by saying that she was more left, more liberal than Bernie. So this is basically her admitting that that is a lie. But the thing about it is that at the same time, this isn't anything we've not known. Hillary didn't need to say to us that she's in the center right or towards center left, though she's actually more towards center right. But we already knew this due to her actions, and we knew that when she was, saying that she's gonna, be harder on Wall Street than Bernie, that she was lying. She was just doing that to get votes. So it's nothing new. One of the bigger issues I actually feel like here is that she's putting down Bernie, a lot of Bernie's more revolutionary plans, such as Medicare for all, acting as if, we can't really achieve those, at least not quickly. But you have to keep in mind that Bernie's Medicare plan, or Bernie's Medicare for all plan, had an estimated cost of about $675 billion. Now you say, oh, that sounds like a lot. Except the thing is that we currently spend, we're getting on $8 trillion on the Iraq war. That's a war that almost everyone agrees is pointless. We're still spending money on it, yet we've already spent many multitudes more money on that. and we're not using that, and we didn't all that. Imagine it had we had all that money just gone to infrastructure in the US, how much better we'd look now, because we could have gotten more than 8 Medicare for all plans. Not that we need more than one, but I'm just saying for the point of reference. On top of that, every year corporations get billions upon billions of tax cuts. So that's just tax money that just was thrown out the window that then you have to pay as the middle class, or as anything that's not the bottom, that's not the top 1%. So it's not, what she's saying is not true. But again, this is stuff we already knew about Hillary. She's a gradualist. So nothing new. Not good, but nothing new. However, there is a second part to the audio, so let's see if she redeems herself a bit in this.
Some are new to politics completely. They're children of the Great Recession, and they are living in their parents' basement. They feel that they got their education, and the jobs that are available to them are not at all what they envisioned for themselves, and they don't see much of a future. I met with a group of young black millennials today, and one of the young women said, none of us feel like we have the job that we should have gotten out of college, and we don't believe that the job market is going to give us much of a chance. So that is a mindset that is really affecting their politics. And so if you're feeling that you're consigned to, being a barista or, some other job that doesn't pay a lot and doesn't have much of a ladder of opportunity attached to it, then the idea that maybe, just maybe, you could be part of a political revolution is pretty appealing. So I think we all should be really understanding of that, and we should try to do the best we can, not to be, a wet blanket on idealism. You want people to be idealistic, you want them to set big goals, but to take what we can achieve now and try to present them as bigger goals. I mean, getting our country to 100% universal coverage is a big deal. Getting that Affordable Care Act to work better for people, getting the costs down so that people feel that they can afford the care that they now have access to, that's a big deal. Going after infrastructure, manufacturing, combating climate change by setting some big goals like 500 million new solar panels by the end of my first term and enough clean power to power every home in America by the end of my second term, that's a big goal. So what we have to do, and what I'm trying to do, is to make the case that we've got ideals, we've got big goals, but we also believe that the path to progress is one that you just have to get up every day and work on. You have to make it your life's work if you do this full time. You have to make it part of your civic responsibility for others, and just keep making that case. It's not as glamorous, it's not as exciting, it doesn't promise a revolution. I mean, I'm still trying to understand the revolution part, because here's how I think about it. And Senator Sanders sort of alludes to this. In order to have the revolution, first we have to take back the Senate and get to 60 votes. Then we've got to take back the House. And that may require some redistricting in order to get people out of safe Republican seats so they can be competitive again. I think we're already in like year 6 or 7 of a 2-year term. So, those of us who understand this, who've been experienced, who've worked in it, know that it's a false promise. But I don't think you tell idealistic people, particularly young people, that they bought into a false promise. You try to do the best you can to say, hey, that's his view, that's what he is offering you, but here's another way where actually we can achieve a lot of what we have said starting day one and make a real difference in people's lives.
So here's actually where I'm going to differ from most people, because I actually think she did slightly redeem herself with this second part. So, but she did mess up on a few points. So let's go over the bad first. So, the most obvious bad thing is her depiction of Bernie supporters. As people who live in their parents' basement, who were only interested in the revolution, because they wanted to be in like this fun, exciting thing. Now, to be fair, I do think that there's a lot of people who don't necessarily understand the policy of Bernie and are just interested in him because he's talking about a revolution. In the same way that a lot of people don't understand Trump because you can't possibly understand Trump and just kind of go with him because he's the one talking against the establishment. Bernie was doing that in the right way, but at the same time, you're still going to have those followers who don't really get what you're talking about and just like your rhetoric. So there is truth in that, but it's not really smart to characterize the entire revolution movement as such. So I think she messed up there. And the thing in the parents' basement, that's also very derogatory. But I think I kind of get where she's coming from. She's just saying that that Bernie, a lot of millennials are in a bad financial situation, and then that's kind of what's giving them their reasons to be in support of a revolution. And then the other bad thing she did was really just she showed her establishment bubble. So when I say that, what I mean is that she's talking as if doing everything can only be done from the system that's already established. So she's saying that, for example, when she's talking about in order for the revolution to happen, we need to get back our seats. Now, the thing is that because that's partisan. That's her talking about the revolution as in it has to be a democratic revolution. There's no chance that this can come from outside the system. This isn't a reformation of the system. This is just us getting back in power. That's the revolution, is the Democrats coming back. And I think that that's really problematic rhetoric, because when people look at that, I think this is the case for a lot of people want a revolution, okay? So when they look at you and you're like, oh, we can do a revolution, but we need to get these seats back, and this is really hard, and it's going to take a long time. And then you have the other guy on the other side, Donald Trump, saying we need a revolution and we're gonna do it now. Believe me, we're gonna do it. To a lot of people, I think that's very attractive, and you're not really bringing any substance to that, and you're not really addressing the core issues of the establishment and how the system currently works. That kind of makes it so that so many of these goals are so hard to achieve. So, and it becomes really hard to believe, Hillary, you mentioned specifically that green energy is a goal, which is good. I think that's a very good thing, but I'll talk about that in a second. But if you're not willing to reform the system, you're still going to be getting so much money from them. So that becomes an incentive to specifically limit progress on that. So that's why people hate the system, is because it's a system that even if you can make progress in, it needlessly slows it down. So, going on to the good. She actually mentioned goals. And again, I'm not sure what donors were in this room, if these were her big, the oil company executives and all that, or if these were just like celebrities, because, like George Clooney was a big supporter of her. I'm not sure, who is in the room, but she does mention green energy, healthcare reform, or not necessarily reform, but she mentions that making the Affordable Care Act more affordable, which I think is kind of foolhardy to try to do instead of just reforming it, because as we're seeing right now, with several healthcare providers just pulling out of it because they realize that under Obamacare, the pharmaceutical companies really hold us by the balls, because they can just say, all right, we're not going to supply it. The whole system fails. All right, we're back to, double premiums or whatever they used to be, potentially more. So because at that point, then the Republicans have the leverage to then say, hey, look, progressivism doesn't work. Obamacare doesn't work. So now we need the free market. And then it gets worse and worse from there. So I think she's wrong on that, but it's good that a priority of hers, apparently, is to get it so Americans have more affordable health insurance. College, more affordable college, all this stuff is good things. And so that makes me, listening to her, want to vote for her more over Trump, because Trump doesn't care about that. Trump doesn't care about minimum wage. He doesn't care about college. I mean, he talks about taxations and all this stuff, but he when he talks about it, So it's usually in the form of he's talking about trickle down economics, all the stuff that's really proven not to work. So I don't I don't like it, and I don't think that that's right for the country. And I think a lot of people agree with me. A lot of people don't, but that's how I see it in terms of that. So I think what she's actually saying isn't bad because she is talking about some progressive values, though again, her willingness to actually act on those is certainly in question. But I think that it's overall a good thing that she's mentioning that she has those priorities. Um, so I think overall, I don't think it's that bad of a leak. It's got a few bad sound bites in it. A lot of the stuff about Bernie, but mostly I think it's just stuff we kind of already knew. I don't think it'll hurt her that much because a lot of what, in at least this is my opinion, and just going on from kind of how I've seen it, is that I don't think a lot of these political leaks hurt Hillary that much. They do hurt her, obviously, but not that much because with a lot of people, when they're looking at candidates, they don't understand a lot of the policy stuff. I mean, there was a recent study that 70% of people, I think I mentioned this in a previous video, that 70% of people don't know what TPP is. And that's a relatively big topic this election. So a lot of people don't necessarily know specifics on policies. So they vote based more on kind of more simplistic things. So for example, with Trump, one of the reasons why when Trump has meltdowns that tends to hurt him a lot more than when Hillary gets like an email scandal is because when Trump says something stupid, he calls somebody Miss Piggy, or he calls the pageant winner Miss Piggy. He's going after the cons. These are things that you don't need to understand politics to understand, oh, wow, that's a bad guy. So I don't think it's going to hurt her that much, but it will hurt. It'll potentially hurt her a little bit among It's definitely going to hurt her among Bernie supporters, which that's actually kind of pivotal right now, as she needs to be getting that support. She's at 52% of Bernie supporters plan to vote for her. That needs to get higher, so this doesn't help. But I don't think it's going to hurt that much in terms of the general population. But I don't think it's that bad of a leak overall, just talking from someone, who's more knowledgeable of politics, because it is mentioning that she has these progressive values. So it's better than somebody who has absolutely none, who goes against that. So it does actually make me like her a little more. But she needs to start being relatively consistent. If she could just be straight with people that she is center right, that would probably go over way better than her trying to act like she's more liberal in public than she actually is.